Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
You're locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke Loves Rasslin.
And there is no one that does it better than
Your host,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
the Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Welcome back to Duke Loves Rasslin, the show about pro wrestling and everything else. What is going on, everybody out there? First and foremost, 5 years. Oh my goodness, 5 years. That anniversary episode was so fun to do. And, you know, reflecting back is interesting. When you think back to the journey and all of the challenges and all of the successes and everything that went into you getting where you are today, it's so fun. And everybody who's ever listened to the show, you know, I like to take a look at the past in order to understand the present and also understand where I'd like to go in the future. So to everyone who listened to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, especially the anniversary episode, thank you. Our numbers have been way, way, way through the roof, which is very interesting. You know, I guess you're liking what you hear. So definitely want to keep that going. And yes, I took last week off. That was the first time in the past 3 years. In fact, I was telling our guest, I took about 4 episodes off the first 2 years of the show. And then after that, literally the past 3 years straight, 52 weeks a year, every year for 3 years, Duke Loves Rasslin was there for you. So I figured, you know what, it's okay to take a step back, take a break, and let that anniversary episode continue to be streamed and listened to and enjoyed, which you folks absolutely ate it up. And I appreciate that. I made a promise to you a couple of weeks ago. I made a promise to you that I would have a guy who is known for beating people up, and he's also known for making some of the most beautiful, delicious food that you will ever taste, especially on the independent wrestling scene. I mean, it's really interesting, this double threat here. He can do it all. And I said, you know what? I got to get this guy on the show because everybody knows the Duke loves food. Not only do I love to eat, but I love the process, the ins and outs of how to make certain dishes and what have you. When I go someplace and I try something, I always think, what are the flavors? What's in this dish? And what would I add to it to make it my own version of this dish? So I just, as much as Duke loves wrestling, Duke loves food. So I said, you know what? I got to get this guy on because if he's doing wrestling and he's doing food, then he's my kind of guy. And by the way, for full disclosure, he looks like he could be my cousin. Okay. I mean, legitimately speaking, this guy looks like he walked straight out of my family. He probably is. So we might get the scoop here today, folks. We're going to find out once and for all if this is my long lost cousin. So without further ado, welcome to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast. He is not only a chef, he is the chef, Chef Manny Fresh.
This is Manny Fresh. I'm the guy that punches you in the face and then feeds you later. What's going on? Thank you. And I appreciate you for having me on your show, man.
Well, first of all, listen, you and I, we are both bald-headed, handsome, light-skinned brothers. So I need you to not punch me in the face, but I will take the food though. So can we make that deal? I mean, who do I got to pay off here to make sure that I avoid the punch in the face, but I still get the meal?
I don't know. You probably got to talk to my wife about that one.
You know, I got a bone to pick with you, Chef Manny, and you know, I may get a punch in the face not only from you but from your wife, Ashley Mayberry. You know, she said some pretty rude things to me the last time she was on this show. Okay,
she told me that she actually told me to mention butt paste to you. So I don't know.
Well, Listen, this is a family friendly show here, Chef Manny. I don't know what's going on with this butt paste stuff and what you folks got going on over there. Okay, but yeah, that was definitely a topic of discussion because I never heard of that. I know that you folks have a new little one over there. I haven't had one yet, so I didn't know about the butt paste. Is that something that surprised you too when you first heard about it?
It actually did. I have two older ones. I have a 19-year-old. Well, she's going to be 19, and I got a son who's 15. He'll be 16. So it's been a while since I personally had to have a small baby. And usually, like, we use like A&D ointment, Desitin, or like Vaseline or whatever on their butts if they got a rash, baby powder, cornstarch. We were going shopping one day, and we seen this thing called butt paste. And I was like, what the hell is butt paste? So it was a thing. And then it became like the butt paste cream. So when they have a rash, you put it on their butt. It's just, I've never seen it.
I mean, it's interesting marketing. At first, it's like, well, why the hell would you name it that? But you know something? This is the second episode where I'm bringing up this butt paste. So clearly the marketing has worked. All right. So whoever created that stuff, good job. You got me talking about it. So it is what it is.
Yes, sir.
Chef Manny, how long have you been wrestling?
I've been wrestling almost 11, 12 years between there. I started really late. I'm going to be 41 this year. I started off in my 30s. I was like 30 years old when I started. So I started around the same age, roughly, I think, as DDP. Started pretty late. Not like a lot of the other guys who started like, 18, 19 years old and stuff. I was already an old dude, starting to get in the ring and taking bumps.
Well, I tip my hat to you because let me tell you something. Something happened to me right around 33, 34 years old. It felt like everything that I had ever done in life, basketball, baseball, football, and all the injuries that I had growing up as a kid. I used to be a heavy lifter too. I got a torn rotator cuff. All of that stuff I was able to do and bounce back when I was a kid, no problem. As soon as I hit about 33, 34 years old, I've just fallen apart, man. That's the end of that. This body was never made for bumps, so there's no way I'll be in a wrestling ring because I'm telling you, I just can't do it. So the fact that you started wrestling around 30 years old, I got to tip my hat to you, man.
Thank you. So ironically, you're mentioning all the sports. I was a jock in high school. Freshman year of high school, I was playing baseball. I was a nose tackle for my high school football team. I was a catcher for the baseball team. I was a power lifter. It's ironic that you say that. I was a power lifter in high school. And I also, I'm from New York City. A lot of people don't know what handball is, but I also play handball up in New York City. So I was on a handball team up there too. So just doing like, all those sports freshman year in high school. And then after that, by my senior year, I think I was playing like 3 or 4 other sports after. And then after high school, I was still, playing football and all that other stuff. And I had injuries. I had a broken wrist, messed up knee, a couple of concussions, and, just wrestling happened. It happened, ironically, how it happened was I was at an indie show in Fort Myers, and I was just sitting in the audience, and a friend of mine at the time, he was working for a radio station down there, and he was like, hey, there's a wrestling show down here. It's an indie show, but if you want to come through, come through. I was like, all right, I'll come through. Came through, and, I saw the show. I was like, oh, this is pretty dope. It's dope because it's local. I like it. And then the booker comes up to me. He goes, hey, man, you ever play any sports or anything? I was like, yeah, I played football, baseball, and stuff like that. He goes, you ever thought about being a wrestler? And I kind of laughed it off. I was like, nah, man, I'm too old for this shit or anything. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cuss. I was like, nah, man, I'm too old for this. He was like, nah, you could totally do this. Guys start older than you sometimes. I was like, all right, I'll come down. I'll try out or whatever. And me and like 4 4 other guys. We went down, and at the time in Fort Myers, the wrestling company that was around was New Era Wrestling. We were training, and they're going to call me a backyarder, and I'm okay. I don't care for that term, but whatever. We were training in the backyard, but there was an actual wrestling ring, not a makeshift wrestling ring. It was an actual low boy 16 by 16 wrestling ring in somebody's backyard, and we were all training there. And I started taking my first bumps, and I was like, man, I could totally do this. This is nothing. And it felt good. I had one of my head trainers, may he rest in peace. His name was Jesse Tupac. He was a Mexican luchador. He was very well known down in the Miami area, but he lived in Naples and always came up to train. And he taught me how to basically, how to basically sell the right way. Because he says, if you're not going to sell, I'm going to make you sell. And sure enough, I didn't sell the right way the first time, and he made me sell. So after training with him for, I want to say 6 months or so, I had one of my first matches, and, ironically, they kind of threw me to the dogs and say, hey, we're going to add you into this mix up with Jake the Snake. And, it's like a big 8-man tag type thing. And, I was like, holy shit, my first match, and Jake the Snake is involved. It's crazy. And then, go forward again. And it's just been a great ride so far. And I say so far, because it's not going to end yet.
Well, that's an interesting concept there. So you were in there with Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, legitimate Hall of Famer, one of the greatest minds in the history of pro wrestling, and one of the most recognizable figures in pro wrestling. So I got to ask, what was it like taking the DDT?
I smiled. I smiled. I mean, I'm a rookie. I smiled. I had a tag partner at the time. He was in the match. And they had me outside. So we were kind of like alternating between each other because he was in the match and he was a rookie also. So it would be one of those, all right, you're in. And then, all right, screw it, I'm just going to pop in. Cause we were both big and we kind of looked like each other. So we were like, all right, you're in. All right, now I'm in. Now you're in. Now I'm in. All right, whatever. He took the DDT. I took one. Everybody took a DDT basically that night. And it was just fun. I freaking popped. I smiled. I laughed. I was like, oh shit, this is cool. And then, you had guys there, like Kazarni was there. It was an amazing time to be like involved in something like that. And then later on, just getting into matches, it started to become natural after a while.
Well, shout out to Jake the Snake Roberts, and I think that's interesting. Did he know that was your first match?
Oh yeah, he did. And I had like a good conversation with him for like an hour after. This was around the time that he started to get sober, and he gave me some advice. He goes, "Look, man, you're an older guy, and you're a bigger guy." He goes, "So you're gonna move a lot slower, and." But he's like, because you are older, these guys don't know how many years you've been in the ring. These fans don't know how long you've been in the ring. So your style of wrestling, you need to be more methodical. You need to show that, hey, I got this. And I've always took that advice from him. And taking that advice from him has helped me throughout the years.
Chef, you brought up the fact that you are, I hear your tag team partner in the background there. Who's that?
Oh, yeah. That's Malik having a little meltdown right now. That's my son, the newborn. He's with a friend of mine right now.
How old is Malik?
He is going to be 3 months old. June 3rd, he'll be 3 months old.
Well, listen, I'm sure Malik is not happy that Chef Manny is doing an interview without him. Because Malik is a future Universal Champion of the world, so I understand.
Nah, man, he's good. He's good right now.
All the kids love to be on Duke Loves Rasslin. I get it. It's all good. It's all good. But no, I wanted to ask you though. You said that Jake the Snake gave you some advice, and you took it to
Yeah.
heart, and you've applied it. And that is a very unusual way of doing things. And here's what I mean by that. We all have an ego, especially we as men, right? We all feel that we know more than we do. We don't want to let on that we don't know what we don't know. So to have somebody pull you aside and take the time, over an hour of his personal time, to put something in your head and give you some advice, and for you to actually take that and do something with it, that is not common, man. So I want to ask, where does that come from, where you're able to receive advice from an elder and actually not take offense and actually take what you can use and apply it? Where does that come from?
My grandmother. So a quick history story about me. I'm a product of adoption. So my mom and dad had me when they were really young. They were like 14 years old. My dad was like back in New York. He was big into like the gangs and, Latin Kings and all that stuff, and selling drugs and doing drugs and drinking and everything, and my parents were dumb back then. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, basically was like, you know what? You guys are too young. You don't know what you're doing. I'm taking your rights away, and he's going to be my son. So at the age of 6 months old, I was fully adopted by my grandmother. So there was a joke in my family that I was always my own uncle. Because technically I am. And she's always given me the advice and always told me to stay humble with everything I do in life, because nothing is guaranteed. Everything could be taken away from you in an instant. And that's how I've always lived my life. Like I try to stay as humble as possible, and never take anything for granted. And if you sat down with me, I could have a huge ego and the biggest swelled head all I want. But if you want to sit down with me and critique me and criticize in a good way, or tell me, hey, I think this is what you should do. And don't get me wrong, I am by far, I am just like every other guy out there. Oh, you can't tell me squat. You don't know what you're talking about. I get that way. But I will sit down and listen. And that does come from my grandmother, because, like I said, she's always taught me to be humble with everything I did. So, yeah.
That is deep. That is deep right there, because again, it's unusual. I can count on one hand how many wrestling veterans, and I've interviewed a whole lot of them, who have told me that they spoke to a person just breaking into the industry, and the person actually sat down and took the time to listen to them. Because it's not like he was your wrestling trainer or anything like that. It's not like you had to listen to him, but you had the respect for your elders, and you had the personal intelligence to understand, I want to be somebody in this industry. I want to be a wrestler. Here is a guy who is somebody. Here is a guy who's been to the top of the mountain. Here is a guy who hasn't necessarily been on TV as an active wrestler in decades, and yet he's still one of the most recognizable figures in this industry. So I better pay attention to what he's saying to me.
And the thing is, too, like, this is for anybody. Like, just take everything with a grain of salt. It's not always going to be in, trying to knock you down or anything. Because there are a lot of young guys that I see now. I sit in a locker room, I listen, and I pay attention. And I see guys, like the older vets, guys that have been in the industry longer than me, talk to the younger guys and try to explain to them, like, hey, this is This is how you should be doing things. You should be like, simple stuff like, hey, you should be shaking everybody's hand, even if you don't like them, even if you got beef with them outside of the wrestling industry. You should shake everybody's hand as a sign of respect or whatever, stuff like that. It's not, don't take it as someone coming down on you. Take it as like, you know what? I respect what I'm doing enough to do this. Because if you don't respect what you're doing, there's no respect for you, because you're losing all of your own integrity. You want to be taken seriously. You can't be taken seriously if you're going to be a joke.
Chef Manny Fresh, my mother is from Jamaica.
Wagwan.
So, yes, sir. Yes, sir. The lessons that have been passed down to me, especially from her, there's a lens that comes from the outside, and there's a traditional sense of respect and honor and being a person of your word and treat people the way you want to be treated. These are all lessons that were hammered into me, and something that I bought into. And just a little bit of time I've spent speaking with you, I can tell that you're a product of a similar environment. So I gotta ask, I mean, where is your family? Is your family primarily from the continuous United States? Are they from the outside? Like what's the story?
All right. So I am what we call in New York a Nuyorican. My family's predominantly Puerto Rican. Let me see. My biological mom's side, we are. They're all Puerto Rican. My grandfather was a pitcher for the Negro Leagues. He is one of the darkest men I know, or that I've seen pictures of, because I never got to meet him. But he was a pitcher for the Pirates in the Negro Leagues. And then my grandfather on my dad's side was a merchant marine. And then my grandmother on my mom's side was a nurse. And then my grandmother who adopted me, my mom, I call her mom. She was a nail technician for a beauty salon. So I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Puerto Rican. I lived in East Flatbush. So anybody who knows Brooklyn knows East Flatbush it's all West Indian. And that's where I grew up. I grew up off of Flatbush and Foster Avenue. I call that Little Haiti, because that's where all the Haitians lived at. But then on my block, it was all West Indian. So I had all the Jamaicans, all the Trinis, and all the Guyanese there. So I grew up around a lot of West Indian influence. So if you were to ever listen to like my workout music, it's not hip hop, it's not salsa, it's not merengue or reggaeton or nothing. It's legitimately, I'm listening to Sanchez, Barrington Levy. I'm listening to like some old school classic reggae music, that nobody will ever listen to on a regular basis unless you've listened to it growing up. And because of those influences, that's where my cooking style comes from. Is, believe it or not, my cooking style comes from wanting to learn how to cook really good West Indian food.
That is deep. And it's culture is something that is so important, and so much can come out of culture. So it's interesting that you have this Puerto Rican lineage, yet because of where you lived, the section of New York where you lived, where you're around Little Haiti, you're around a lot of Jamaicans, West Indians in general, that whole culture has influenced you so much to the point where that's the type of food that you are most interested in making and experimenting with and things like that. That's dope. That's really dope.
Yeah, I mean, when I started to like really wanted to cook, it was like, okay, how the hell do I make roti? How do I make that from scratch? And I've messed it up plenty of times, but I nailed it. I nailed it. And I had this lady who used to babysit me when I was a kid, and I called her my nana. And I remember the first time she was like, hey boy, come over here and come eat with us now. I was like, all right, whatever. And it was the first time I ever had goat. And I was like, what is this? And she goes, it's curry goat. I was like, goat? She was like, yeah, Baba. I was like, okay. I was like, all right, whatever. I'll try it. And boy, she made that curry goat, and I was like, Nana, can you teach me how to make this stuff? She goes, yeah, you just come here every other day, and we'll keep making stuff. And she let me make a few things with her. She taught me how to make oxtail. She taught me how to make roti from scratch. She taught me how to make goat. And then it just evolved little by little. And then, my mom, I started learning how to make, I call it Puerto Rican soul food. I started learning how to make, the acapullas and the pasteles and, carne guisado, ropa vieja, all that good stuff. But ironically, even though like deep down in my soul, my food deep in my soul was West Indian food, because a lot of people do need, and like you said, you need to know your culture. Puerto Rico is in the West Indies, just a lot of people don't acknowledge that. So when I say West Indian food, I'm talking about Jamaican food, Haitian food, Puerto Rican food, Cuban food, Dominican food. I cultivate everything into one. So when I say West Indian food, that's deep in my soul. But I've evolved it to where I started to learn and wanting to learn Asian food. So my specialty now, today, right now, is Asian Polynesian. And that's what I do now. I do like an Asian fusion type stuff with a lot of things I do.
That's an interesting take there. And it's so funny because we spoke offline just about your culinary journey, and we're gonna talk about that here in a moment. But my sister is a chef, and it's interesting. She knows how to make a lot of the traditional French and Italian cuisine and what have you because of our family makeup. She can do some of the Jamaican stuff, but we have had entire Thanksgivings where we do themes, and one of our more common themes is Asian. So it is funny that you say that because, yes, sir. I mean, whether it's roast duck or, whatever. And Polynesian Asian is interesting because it tends to, especially the sauces, instead of being, super savory, you're talking more salty sweet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, you know what? You might have hit the Oh man, you might have just hit it right there. I think me and you are related somewhere down the line.
We have too much in common not to be. I'm telling you, Chef Manny. And folks, everybody listening here, you probably heard me tell this story before. Actually, I know you have, because when we had Alan Roulette of River Horse Photography on the show a few weeks back, and we were discussing his latest photography from WrestleMania week, and I brought up the fact that I saw a photo of some guy who's cooking food, and I could just tell that this was just a really genuinely nice, cool person, and he looked like we could be related. It just seemed like a cool guy. And he was like, that's Chef Manny Fresh. That's my guy right there. And then fast forward, I have Ashley Mayberry, who, when she wasn't talking about butt paste, she brought up her husband and how great of a chef he is. And well, who's your husband? Chef Manny Fresh. So it's like, Jesus, this guy just keeps popping up. Okay, the Chef Manny Fresh guy, whoever this guy is, he's got to be my long lost cousin. No two ways about it. So let's take a step back, because let's talk about your culinary journey, and we really can't talk about culinary without first talking about your grade school and high school journey. So take me back to grade school, Chef Manny, because you have a really interesting journey there.
All right. So, like I said, I was adopted by my grandmother, and we lived in Brooklyn. We lived off our means. So it was my grandmother, my two uncles, and my dad, which my dad was in and out of jail, or he was either in and out of jail all the time, or he was on the road, because he was a truck driver too. So he would go from New York to Florida back and forth all the time. And then in between there, get arrested somewhere. And then I had my two uncles. One was an artist. He was a graffiti artist and he was an airbrush artist. And then I had another uncle who was, he taught me, he taught me a lot on how to, the best way I could say it is he taught me how to finesse things. He was the finesser. He was the one like, hey, you want to make sure that, you know, when you go to dinner, you wear a shirt and tie, or, you know, he was the guy that was like the pretty boy. So I've taken a lot from them. So grade school, I went to PS 52 in Brooklyn in Sheepshead Bay. And, you know, going to grade school and stuff and, you know, having to go through things. And, you know, I was an emotional kid because, you know, I didn't have my parents. I was living with my grandmother. So every time they had those, you know, mother's son days, or, you know, bring your parent to school day or whatever, it was always a rough time for me. So my grades weren't great, but they were decent. My grandfather passed away by third grade. And I flew to Puerto Rico. I stayed in Puerto Rico for a little while, and then I came back to the States. And then he passed away. The day I flew back into the States, he passed away. And that was pretty hard because I was like, I just saw him this morning. So that was a hard thing. And I took it to heart. And it was really hard for me to deal with a lot of stuff in school. So, you know, my grades were reflecting a lot of stuff. And they thought, hey, you know, maybe his grades are slumping the way they are because, you know, he's grieving so much. So then I go into fourth grade and they still see that, hey, my grades are going really bad. We need to figure out what's wrong with them. So they give me this crisis counselor that I had to see every day, literally every day for a while. And then during my crisis sessions and stuff that I was seeing them, they used to have me read like these passages and stuff. And when I would read them, but they would be backwards. In my eyes, they would be backwards. So something as simple as your message will appear here, to me, it looked like here will appear message your. So it would just flow off my tongue just that way. They did some testing on me, and it came to find out by fourth grade, I was dyslexic. To this day, I'm 40 years old, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but I am dyslexic. So has it gotten a lot better? Yes, it's gotten a lot better because I've done a lot of training to help it. But in conversation, there are times where you will hear me say things crazy or kind of backwards, where, like, you know, if I'm going over a match with somebody, I'm like, yeah, drop down, shoulder tackle, hip toss, you know, drop kick. I'll say, yeah, drop down, drop kick, hip toss. And they're like, wait, that's not the spot. I'm like, wait, I know what you meant. Just, I got you. And they think I'm messing up the spot. I'm really not messing up the spot. It's just because I am dyslexic. And going through that through high school, you know, it was hard. It was hard. I dropped out of high school when my senior year. And it wasn't for what everybody thinks it was for. It wasn't because of my dyslexia or anything like that. I dropped out of high school for a girl. I was stupid. I needed 1 credit to graduate high school. And I thought I knew everything. I had like $10,000 in my savings account. And I said, you know what? I don't need school anymore. I got this fine girl. I'm just going to drop out. I'm moving to Pennsylvania. And I took my girlfriend at the time. We moved to Pennsylvania, and I thought I knew everything. And clearly I didn't. I blew through $10,000 real quick. I sent her back to Brooklyn. I stayed in Pennsylvania a little bit longer. And then I went up. I ended up back in Brooklyn. And, you know, I just started trying to find myself, find out who I was and everything. I was I was slinging dope at the time, and it wasn't for me. And then I had one of my cousins who says, "Look, you're not doing this. We're gonna do something else with you." So my cousin took me under his wing. He took me as a little brother almost. Um, so my cousin was the guy I wanted to be my whole life, basically as a kid. He was the cool cousin. He was the one that, had the nice cars and all the girls and all that. So he took me under his wing. At the age of 16, he was taking me to the clubs. So at 18, he said, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep you grounded. So he got me a gig at this reception hall with a friend of ours named Mario. And he had me DJing legitimately at this reception hall. And I was DJing since the age of 15. I was doing like hooky parties and stuff like that. And, my cousin would bring me into like these big clubs like Roseland or the China Club or something like that. And I was like 16, 17 years old DJing at these places. So that was a big thing. It was a big deal to me. But he would have to pay them off all the time just to let me in the door because I was underage. But he was like, yeah, we're gonna keep you at this reception hall. We're gonna make sure you stay legit, keep yourself clean and everything. Like, not getting in any trouble. So I did that. And then we ended up owning an after hours bar. So at the age of 18, I owned an after hours bar with my cousin. And we were making money. We were making bank. And I think around 20 years old, I met my ex-wife. I fell in love quick. I was young, stupid, fell in love real quick with somebody who had kids. And again, I knew everything. So I fell in love with her. And let me see, fast forward a little bit more. She got pregnant with my daughter. So I did the noble thing. I asked her to marry me. Couple of years down the line, my daughter was born and she got pregnant again with my son, with my oldest son. And then I said, wow, I asked her to marry me, but we're still not married. So we ended up getting married in 2007. 2007, we go on our honeymoon to Puerto Rico. And then we made a stop here in Florida. And we went to SeaWorld. And then I have family down here. And we came to see some family here. And my ex-wife was like, yo, this is a really nice spot. Like, we could really move down here. Now, at the time, in 2007, I was living in the projects in downtown Brooklyn with my kids, like with my children. And, I think my daughter was maybe about 4 or 5 years old. My son was about 2 or 3 years old. I'm like, yeah, Florida does sound nice. I don't want to be raising my kids in the projects in Brooklyn. That's not in the plans for them. So we made a decision to move down here in 2007, right after we got married. We moved down here the 4th of July. The month that we moved down, I said, you know what? If I'm making a change for my kids, I'm going to make a change for me. So I went down to the Lee County Educational Department and I said, hey, I want to get my GED. So they said, well, you had to take classes and everything. I was like, I don't need the classes. Just give me the test. I just want the test. So they gave me the test. I aced the test. I passed the test. And I got my GED. But they didn't give me my GED. They actually gave me a Florida State high school diploma, which that was more meaningful for me. Because it was like, you know what? I did all this hard work and it wasn't a good enough diploma, aka GED, but it was an actual high school diploma. So for me, that was a big deal for me. After I got my GED, I was working for the cable company for about 6 years or so. And then I was cooking a lot. I was just cooking so much. A lot of family get-togethers and stuff. And I said, you know what? I told my ex-wife, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to just do it. She was like, why? I was like, because I think I got something here. I think this is what I want to do. So I go to culinary school for about 2 years. I graduated from Fort Myers Tech, and I graduated with high honors. I had if you had to put a number to it, I had a 99.5 average. I was on the honor society. I graduated top of my class with one other person. So it was two of us that graduated top of the class. And that's where I am as far as educationally with where I'm at. The biggest struggle in culinary school was my dyslexia because reading recipes, I would have to read them 3, 4, 5 different times. And I had to read them over and over and over. Even now, I still do the same thing. My weakest thing was baking. I'm a savory chef. I'm not a baker. But that was the biggest drawback for me was my dyslexia, because as much as I knew what I was reading, it was hard reading it because when your recipe says, hey, you need 3.5 liters of XYZ and you need 2 cups of this, you're looking at it, and to me, I'm like, oh, so I need 2 cups of this, but am I supposed to have 2 liters or 3 cups? So you're like wondering where it is. So for those of you that don't have dyslexia or don't understand it, it's basically looking at a sheet of paper and seeing numbers and letters backwards. Sometimes you don't see them backwards. And that's a misconception with a lot of people. They think it's, oh, you see everything backwards. No, you look at everything and everything's jumbled. So everything literally in your brain, everything's moved around to different places. So it's like a puzzle that you got to put together and decipher, like, okay, this is what it is. So that's where I hope people who have dyslexia could understand, hey, you can overcome this shit.
I mean, it's just such a powerful life story. And I got to tell you, Chef Manny Fresh, not bad for a dyslexic high school dropout.
Yeah.
You turn that around and you become the top of your class. First of all, you went and got your high school diploma,
Yeah.
technically. And then you went on to be the top of your class in culinary school. And, you're also doing the pro wrestling thing. You got a lovely family. Like, you're a guy who, despite all of the challenges in life, you have found a way to win.
I mean, it's not all winning. Like, now I'm going to really put myself out there. A lot of people don't know this in the wrestling industry. They're probably going to know now after I say this now. But I currently at this moment, I currently suffer from PTSD, anxiety, and depression. The PTSD is a lot of trauma that I went through, growing up, but a lot of trauma that I really went through when I had my divorce. So I don't sleep. I have night terrors. I shake, and my wife Ashley, she's an amazing woman. She's gone through hell and back with me. Let's just say that, and I love her tremendously because of that. Because there were days where if I was in her shoes, I would have left already. So I love her to death, and huge shout out and huge thanks to her, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be in the place that I'm at currently right now. So, yeah.
That's deep. That's really deep. And again, here you are continuing to try to. It's okay to be acknowledged for the difficult journey you've had in life and the way that you found a way to make it out on a positive side of town, so to speak. So even what you're talking about right now with the PTSD and what have you, you're still able to come on this show, openly talk about your life, and I know for a fact inspire somebody listening right now. So it's tremendous, man. It really is tremendous, and I don't want you to run away from me saying to you
Oh no,
that you are an inspiration. I'm serious.
I
I
appreciate it,
feel
man.
that. Feel that. Oh,
I ironically though, prior to the culinary thing, I was actually thinking about becoming a teacher. Believe it or not, I do have a son who's autistic, and that's what, believe it or not, that's what drove me more to go to culinary school, because I have an autistic son, and having someone with a disability and having a child who's autistic, it's a really difficult thing, especially when it comes to food, because you're always trying to figure out how to feed them. Because my son at one point, all he wanted to do was eat Pop-Tarts and chicken nuggets. That's it. That was his meal every single day. You could not get that kid to eat anything. And then I was tossing back and forth, like, do I want to be a chef? Do I want to be a teacher? Because I want to educate people about about this, but I also want to teach. And it was a hard thing, but food was where it was at for me. Food was like, you know what, this is where it's at. And I'm thankful enough that my son has gone from eating Pop-Tarts and chicken nuggets to now I could take him out to a sushi bar. I could take him out to go eat ramen. This is a kid who never wanted to eat veggies, and I got him to eat freaking tomatoes, onions, lettuce, the little things. He's eating spinach, bok choy. He's eating jalapeno bread, stuff like that. And that was like so hard to even have him eat something as simple as a noodle. So, anyone that's ever dealt with someone who's autistic can understand the struggle that I've gone through. I still go through every day right now, and I'm still learning with my son. My son's going to be 16, and I'm still learning from him. So he's like one of my driving inspirations on doing the food that I do, because I want to be able to feed everyone. Because to me, food is a universal voice to the world. You have world leaders. What do they do when they're talking about things that they're going to do in the world? They sit down and eat food. What happens when you have peace treaties? They're sitting down eating food. Food moves the world in so many different ways, and that's where I want to be. That's what I want to be a part of.
That is something else. And it's one thing to be a picky eater. It's another thing to be where your son is at. And the fact that, like you said, you were able to get him to the point where you could take him out for ramen and sushi and what have you. I mean, that is just tremendous. So teaching is definitely in your blood and in your DNA. And I'm sure one way or another, even if it's just with the kids, you're going to continue to be successful even in that endeavor, because you have the right attitude and the right motivation behind you there.
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to do, was teach. And that's actually what cultivated Kayfabe Kitchen, believe it or not. Kayfabe Kitchen was an idea. It was an idea. Kayfabe Kitchen was, hey, what do I want to do? Well, I love wrestling. And every time we're on the road, we eat shit. And I say shit because we're always on the road eating whatever's at the gas station, or, we're going to Denny's or freaking crappy ass Waffle House and stuff like that. A lot of wrestlers have diet restrictions and stuff. And a lot of them always ask me, yo, what can I do to make this taste better at home? Or, because they know I cook. So they come to me all the time. And sometimes I'll come to shows and I'll bring food to shows, like, yeah, I made this. Here's some empanadas, or here's some tacos that I made, or whatever. And it started to click with me, like, yo, they want to learn. Like, these guys want to, like, my friends want to learn how to cook. I got something here. And I told Ashley, I was like, babe, I think I want to do something where I could teach people how to cook. And then I told her, I was like, you know what if I did like a podcast, right? I was like, I don't want to do a podcast because I can't show people what I do. So I was like, what if I did a YouTube channel? So I started playing around on Facebook Live on my personal page. So COVID happened, and I was bored at home during COVID, and I said, you know what? I'm not a baker or a sweet type of chef. So I said, you know what? Let me start baking, and I started to bake, and I messed up a lot, but I started getting better and better. And I sent you a couple of pictures of some of the things that I made. And as I was doing the baking stuff, I was live on my Facebook, and I was like, yeah, we're going to mess this up. We'll figure it out. And as I was cooking and doing all this stuff live during COVID, I started noticing my friends are watching. Like, it would be 3 or 4 people watching, and then it would go more and more. Then it would be, oh, you have 40 people watching. Oh, you have 80 people watching. And then the numbers started going up. I'm like, this is a thing. Like, people want to watch. And I was like, well, maybe it's because everybody's bored because we're quarantined. But no, this became a thing. Like, it became a thing where after, we started coming out of quarantine and shows started popping up again. And, I would go to these shows and my peers would come to me and say, hey, man, when are you going to do another live stream? And I'm like, really? You were watching that? Bro. And these are guys that I haven't seen in a while. I haven't even spoken to them in almost 2 years. But because they follow me on social media and because of the pandemic, they were watching me cook. And I'm like, you guys are really watching this stuff? And it amazed me, and I'm very humbled by it. I'm like, wow, that's cool. That's freaking cool. I'm like, yeah, all right. And it brings me back to the YouTube thing. I told Ashley, I was like, maybe I should just do a YouTube. And she was like, yeah, just do it. I was like, well, what if I did a YouTube podcast style? She was like, what do you mean? Well, I'll and this is the concept of Kayfabe Kitchen on YouTube. The concept is basically I interview my peers, my friends, or anyone. It could be, I don't know. It could be any wrestler. Kenny Omega for all I care. I don't care. Just you come to my house, I go to your house, whatever it is. We talk about wrestling for literally 2 minutes. Because my show is not just about wrestling. This is beyond wrestling. We'll talk about your wrestling career for like 2 minutes. Because after that, I don't give a crap about wrestling no more. We're talking about food. We're talking about the stuff everybody wants to talk about. Because how many times as us wrestlers, we go on these podcasts, and no offense, I appreciate you having me on your show. But all we do is talk about wrestling. And we can't talk about the things we like. So I'm like, yo, let's just talk about food, man. That's it. Talk about the type of food you like eating. What makes you want to eat? So I did 2 episodes right now are up on the YouTube page. I'm still going to be recording some more. But the first episode for me was fun. I did it with a good friend of mine, Aaron Nova. And it was a fun episode, and we were talking, and we were talking as friends. That's it. We were just talking as friends, and the whole video, it came out so smooth. It came out so fun, and it was so good. And I was like, I think I got something here. So I ended up getting an LLC. So I am an LLC. I am official LLC of Kayfabe Kitchen in the state of Florida. And it's not just a YouTube page. It's also, a catering. It's whatever I want it to be, essentially.
Chef Manny Fresh, first of all, I had to know that there was going to be a heel turn at some point during this conversation because, for you to sit there and say no offense while you sit there and disrespect the podcasters in the world, all the humanoids that ask everybody the same questions over and over. Where did you train? And what's your favorite move? And all that. How dare you talk trash?
Listen, I'm a heel at heart
my
anyway. So.
No, listen, man. This is, you know what? Exactly what you said is the reason why here on the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, we go beyond just what's happening in the ring.
And I appreciate that so much more. No, you don't understand. I appreciate that so much more, because it's like you actually want to get to know the person a lot more versus, hey, drop some names on us. Who'd you wrestle? Drop this name. Drop that. No, I don't want to do the name dropping stuff. I could care less about the name dropping stuff. I care more about the person, the individual, who you are.
And the irony of that is when you find out that your heroes, you guys are real life superheroes. When you find out these superheroes are actually real people with real life experiences, it makes you care about them more. It makes you want to follow their journey more. I can tell you right now, my audience here loves food. I mean, who doesn't? And just the fact that you're a wrestler by day and then you get into the phone booth and you put on your chef's coat and then Chef Manny Fresh is the chef cooking up at night. I mean, that just, I'm sure that you're going to see a lot of traffic on that Kayfabe Kitchens. In fact, why don't we let everybody know the best way they can keep up with you and everything you have going on, Chef Manny? Why don't you plug away?
All right. So you can find me on my Linktree. So you type in Linktree, so it's linktr.ee/Gonzalez, Gonzalez 628. And you can find all of my socials on there, my YouTube page, my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, my TikTok. You can also find apparel on there. I do private chefing. I also do catering and all that good stuff. So
I love it. Listen, Chef Manny Fresh, you're a guy from New York. I'm a Boston guy. I know that we're supposed to have a rivalry, but because we're related somehow, some way, I'm sure if we did our research, I'm glad that I'm on your side because, like I said, I don't want to get punched in the face, but I definitely want to eat the food. So I got to ask you this because we have Memorial Day weekend coming up.
Right.
And I need to know from Chef Manny Fresh, once and for all, what is the spread for Memorial Day weekend? I understand if you don't have your menu set, but let's say a guy like me who's kind of a novice. I like to have a little, I can do a little something in the kitchen, but I make my own barbecue sauce. I make my own juice, which then I turn into frozen ices and slushies and things like that. I do stuff like that, man. I don't. And when I say I make my own juice, listen, Chef Manny, I will get the fruit, right? After you clean the fruit and you de-stem it and all that, whatever you got, strawberries, blueberries, whatever. Right. I'll put it in the pot. I'll put my sweetener, sugar or what have you. I'll put a teaspoon of lime juice. I'll put my water, and then I will boil that and mash as that boils to get the real juice out of there, and then mix it up. Then I'll strain out the solids from the liquids.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm trying to tell you, brother, strain the solids from the liquids, and then from there, I can take the liquid and make a juice, or I can make, if I'm going to do a slushy, then I can then take the solids and put it back in the Ziploc bag and shake it up and what have you. So you have bits of fruit in there with it. Instead of buying a fruit pop, you can make your own. So I call myself a novice, but I can get down like that, brother. So
that's what's
help
up,
me out
man.
here. Listen, I'm not at the top of my class in culinary school now. Like I said, my sister's the real chef, but I'm a guy that likes to mess around a little bit. I have tahine, I just discovered tahine, the seasoning
Tahine.
there. So yes, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I've been putting it on my fruit salad or what have you.
Shout out to all the Mexican cousins out there.
Right, you know they're part of the
Tahine.
family too. That's right, they're part of the family too. So
that's the southern part.
That's right. That's our southern cousins right there. You got that right. You got
Tahine.
that.
I actually started using tahine a couple of years ago because I wasn't familiar with it either until I said, you know what, screw it. Let me just buy it and see what's up. And it's actually good. You can put that stuff like on mangoes, on watermelons. Those are really good on there, believe it or not. It has like this really tangy, sweet and sour taste to it. So it's really good.
Listen, shout out to Melanie. Melanie is one of the fantastic behind the scenes folks. I believe she's in charge of production for our friends over there at Mission Pro Wrestling. And she was giving me a whole tutorial about tahine. You know, she knows all about that stuff there. So that's deep. That's deep.
That's down in Texas, yeah.
Yeah, man. So you already know they definitely get their big fruit cups and they put the tahine in there and what have you. But and you know, I started doing. I actually did it today for lunch because I season my salad, Chef Manny. Okay, I season my salad. I don't just get the vegetables.
Preach on.
Put salad. Yeah, I actually will get. And when I say season, I'm talking garlic powder. I'm talking onion powder. I'll do
preach, baby, preach.
Listen, brother. I'll put the little, not so much salt, but definitely the pepper. Sometimes I do the lemon pepper, just a hint. I do a little olive oil. You know. So
okay. You know what? I'm gonna get to my spread in a second. I gotta ask Duke a very important question. This is gonna be the make or break friendship right now.
Oh no pressure.
No, none whatsoever. It's gonna be a 3-part question.
All right.
How do you like your steak? Meaning temperature wise.
Okay.
How do you like it seasoned? And do you put any sauces on your steak?
Chef Manny, I don't know if you're going to like me after this. Because you got to understand something. I'm a sauce guy. It's a thing. Everybody knows I'm a sauce. I actually make my own barbecue sauce and steak sauce. I actually made my own Worcestershire sauce the other day.
I got you, but come on, give it to me, man.
So my steak, I can do it medium. I like a good medium, so not medium rare so much, but definitely medium. So kind of in the middle. I do want to see some pink in there.
You're safe on that right now.
I like steak that like has some good seasoning flavor to it, man. I mean, sometimes I'll even throw a bay leaf in there. When I let it sit and marinate, which gives it a very different flavor. Sometimes there's even some rosemary. I've done jasmine. I've done some interesting stuff when it comes to seasoning the steak because I want the flavor. Thyme. I love thyme on my steak. But you know, some real coarse salt, not just regular salt. But if you're doing
that's it. We good.
Yeah,
we good.
Okay. Because the real stuff.
Because my steaks, like if you were to come to my house right now, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna make you a steak. How I make my steaks, okay? I prefer my steak medium rare. All right. Has to be coarse salt, like you said, salt and pepper. And I like Tabasco sauce.
Oh, okay.
I like Tabasco sauce. And it's not a lot. It's literally like a couple of dabs on it. Now, I personally like the flavor of the steak as is. And don't get me wrong, I do sometimes take the butter, do the thyme, or I'll do the rosemary and stuff like that and put the fresh garlic and everything on it. I do that from time to time. But I prefer my steak salt, pepper, and cooked. Medium rare. That's it. The reason why I personally like it that way is because I want to taste the actual product versus the other stuff that I'm putting into it. If that makes sense to you.
It makes sense to me, but I'm the opposite. I want it to taste the way I want it to taste.
Right. Me, that's like for everybody out there on the podcast to understand a little bit more. That's like a wrestling show. That's like me saying, you know, you like the Shawn Michaels, the glitz, the glamour, and all of that. Me, I like the Dean Malenko. Feel me?
Fair. Fair.
I like
100%.
the Dean Malenko. You walk in, get the job done, walk out.
Yep. Fair.
That's me.
That's a great analogy. You change Shawn Michaels to Ric Flair though, because Shawn Michaels is a punk. He's a Ric Flair wannabe. I know Ric Flair always says Shawn Michaels is the greatest performer of all time, but I think Ric Flair is wrong. Ric Flair is the greatest of all time, but I get what you mean because I love the Iceman. Do you remember when Dean Malenko was the number one ranked wrestler in the world in pro wrestling, PWI 500?
Absolutely.
Dude.
And a couple of my heroes, believe it or not, Dean Malenko is up there. Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit. We're not allowed to talk about him, but whatever.
Of course.
Chris
He's one of
Benoit.
the greatest of all time. Yep.
Yes, he is. I don't care what they say about him. Chris Benoit. For me, because I am a big guy, Bam Bam Bigelow. Vader.
Okay.
Mike Awesome.
Yes.
And one of the most underrated wrestlers out there of all time for me, Roddy Piper.
Sure. I interviewed his daughter, Teal.
Yeah.
She's great. Very nice young lady.
She is.
Very nice young lady. Yeah. She's great. Wow. That's a good mix.
So back to my spread for Memorial Weekend.
Yes. Let's get down to the main event here.
I am going to be doing a smoked brisket.
Yes. Yes.
I'm buying a brisket tomorrow, and then I'm going to marinate it for 2 days. And then I'm going to wake up around 4 in the morning and pop it in the smoker and slow cook it till about 6 in the afternoon, 6 in the evening, roughly. Mm-hmm.
How many hours is that? But is that 10, 11 hours?
That's about 13.
Okay, good. Yes, that's gonna you
a good 13 hours.
You only need a fork and you can pull that apart, man. That is going to shred right up, right?
That's going to be a good 13 hours, yeah.
Yeah, that'll shred right up with a fork.
I usually with the brisket, I take the cap off, and what I do with the cap, I do the burnt ends with the cap also.
Nice, yeah. Nice.
So I do the burnt ends.
Let me tell you something interesting. Hold that for a second because we got our meat, which is important. We got our protein.
All right.
I just found out. I never knew this, and I've been eating this stuff my entire life. My mom's Jamaican. I don't think a lot of people realize this, but in Jamaica, we have a very strong Irish population over there.
Yes, you do. Irish,
it's even in my blood.
Irish, Spanish, and English,
Chinese,
and Chinese. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people it would blow their mind to see a Chinese, Asian, but literally they're mostly from China. To see a Chinese person speaking with a Jamaican patois is just, it'll knock your socks off.
And if people do their history why the Chinese was there, it was because they had to travel through the West Indies to get to the Americas to help build the railroads. So a lot of people don't realize that. I do my history.
You know your history. That's right.
I know my history. I know where I come from. So that's why we're going to get into a whole political thing. But yeah,
I know, right?
I know that's for your other podcast.
Yes, I know. Yes, I got to get you on the other one.
I know where I come from. Put it like that.
Damn right. So, but I bring up Irish because of this. I'm in Boston. I'm born and raised in Boston. Of course, we have a strong Irish population here as well.
In fact, tell me. I already know what you're going to say.
All right, you know where I'm going. So
cabbage.
I didn't. Well, of course, I love I love to make cabbage. In fact, I was eating sauerkraut today, which is cabbage. But I did not know corned beef is technically a brisket.
Yeah, it is.
I did not know that it was a brisket. So here's the deal, Chef. When it comes to St. Patrick's Day,
that is the cap.
Yeah, that's the cap, right? So when it comes to St. Patrick's Day, corned beef is dirt cheap in Massachusetts. It is. I mean, I'm talking like 9 cents a pound.
Jeez.
Right. So I bought a couple, and throw them in the freezer. And it's like whenever you're ready to make it, you make it. So I made one, and what did I do? I soaked it. I soaked it for about 2 hours, just to get the excess salt out of it. Because corned beef is very, very salty. There's a reason. That's why it's called corned, right? And then I made it. I put it in the slow cooker, and I cooked it for about 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
And the way that it came out like regular deli style corned beef. So you slice it, and you slice it thin, but it has a little bite to it and what have you, and everything was fine. That's great. The second one, I put it in the slow cooker, and I actually cooked that for 11 hours on low in the slow cooker. And Chef Manny, let me tell you something. Like I was just talking about with what you're going to do when you smoke yours for at least 13 hours, you take the fork and you can pull that sucker apart. It is just so incredible. And then you can take it and do whatever the hell you want with it. If you want to sauce it, if you want to, you could turn it into whatever flavor you want after that.
Oh,
right?
yeah. It's like a sponge.
It's like a sponge. It really is. And when I do it in the slow cooker, I use allspice, bay leaf, garlic powder, onion powder. Let me tell you something, brother. It sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, the flavor profile when it's done is just incredible.
You want me to help you add something to that?
Please do. Please
add some soy sauce.
Oh yes. Okay.
Right. Add some soy sauce. Right.
Okay.
Not too much. All right. Add some sesame oil.
Ooh.
And then add some ginger, but not powdered ginger.
Yes.
You have to
ginger.
Like real ginger, but you have to. How do you say it in English? In Spanish, it's called guayado. Oh my God!
You have to crush it. You have to crush it.
Not crush it. Oh my gosh! What is the word that I'm looking for? I know it in Spanish.
Define it. What do you
grind it? You have to grind it.
That's what I meant when I said crush it. Listen, I know a little bit of Spanish, Chef Manny, so that's why I was close.
Yeah, you have to make it like a paste, almost like a whole paste.
So let me tell you something. I buy the frozen crushed ginger, which is basically a paste. It's like a little ice cube, but it's all the ginger. I do it with garlic too, and it's basically the paste.
Okay, and you're up in Boston right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think they may have this at Walmart. I don't know if you guys got a Walmart up there or not. You probably do.
Of course.
There is a paste. There's an actual paste in the veggie section. I know they have it down here in Florida. There's an actual paste. It comes in a tube, and you can use the paste for it.
Yes, so it's white, right? Isn't it like a white tube?
I believe so.
Like a frosting tube. It almost looks like a frosting tube.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
So yeah, use that. But yeah, if you use those flavors on top of that, that's mixing the Jamaican style with the Asian style. That's the fusion part. That's the fusion part.
Yes.
Okay. Now that we're talking about corned beef, now we're getting into the corned beef stuff. I have friends that are Polynesian. And this is me not doing, I hate doing this. This is me not doing name drops. So I'm not going to do no name drops, but they are Hall of Famers.
I got you. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they are Hall of Famers, and we call him Pops. So those of you that are listening to it, you know who Pops is. We go. Me and Ashley go to his house every so often, and I always ask him. I'm like, "Hey, Pops, what kind of food do you like having?" And we'll talk, and he's a big seafood eater. He is a huge seafood eater. But I asked him about this one dish that had corned beef in it, and he told me the proper way to prepare it and stuff. So basically, you take a banana leaf and you put corned beef inside the banana leaf mix it with coconut milk, sauteed onions, salt, pepper, garlic, and then you fold the banana leaf, right? And you tie it. Traditionally, you put it over a fire of coal. Okay, you put it over a fire of coal for like a couple of hours, and then you take it out, and then you open it from the banana leaf. Now, the banana leaf has flavor, a lot of flavor.
Sure.
Mixed with the coconut milk, mixed with the salt, pepper, and the garlic, and the onions and everything. I made this at home, and it came out so good.
Wow.
It came out so good. So this is, again, I implore people, get away from your safety net. And when I say your safety net, open up your palate more, because there is so much good food out there, like from different cultures. Start learning about them, because you're missing out on a lot. Like, I do a lot of reading on food. There are days where I'll look at my wife and say, hey, what part of the world do you want to eat out of? And she'll come up with the most random freaking country, and I'll start making it. I've made Somalian food before. I've made Turkish food. I've made food from Israel. I made food from Samoa. I made, you name it. I'll mimic it. I'll make it. And trust me, there's food out there that I made. I was like, this tastes like crap, but I make it. And I follow it through and through.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And again, it comes back to what we talked about before, respecting culture, and I truly believe that there are certain topics and there are certain areas that if you can find common ground with people in those areas, it will open up everything else. Food and music.
Yeah.
Right? That's
it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Food literally makes the world go round. People forget about that.
Yes.
Food makes the world go round. I got a quick, interesting story. I don't know if we have time.
Go ahead.
Ashley, my wife, back when I was going through my divorce, I was in a really bad place. I was in a dark place. I was going through a deep depression, and she knew I was. And her way of trying to get me out of the funk, her and her mom, my mother-in-law now, her and her mom decided to sign me up for a TV show. So I told them I didn't want to do this, but she said, too bad, I already did it. So I had some of my friends, I had to do a submission video. So I had some of my friends in the wrestling business, do a submission video on why I should be picked or chosen to be on this TV show, whatever. I sent it in. They called me back up. Hey, the producers want to see you. This is what you need to do. You need to cook us a dish. And it has to be your best dish. I said, okay. So I go to downtown Orlando. There are maybe about 500 people here. 500 people doing the same thing. They all brought a dish. So I'm up against 499 other people. So I go in, I bring my dish, and they had like about 15 judges. All of them had to taste it. They all tasted it. All right. So then there's like different sections. Okay, you go. At the end of it, at the end of the day, there was about 40 of us left. So that was round one, per se. I moved on to round two. Round two was the interview. Why you should be on this show. So the interview part was, we need you to tell us the life story, because again, this is reality TV. And in my mind, it's like, oh, we don't give a crap about your food. We want ratings. We want to know the sob story about you. So at that time, I was going through my divorce. I wasn't able to see my children. And then the story I told you, I'm a product of adoption. I come from the ghetto. All of this, and I'm a chef, and blah, blah. I gave him that, and I'm a professional wrestler on top of that. And, my son is autistic. I give him everything. I threw everything at them. After my interview. There were 6 judges listening to my interview. Every single one of them were crying, plus some of the contestants that were there. And I was like, I'm not saying this stuff to get empathy or anything. I'm saying it because this is what I'm going through right now. This is what I am. Then they moved me to round 3. Round 3 comes, and here we are. It's to decide, are you going to be on a show or not? I was voted the best chef in the state of Florida for this TV show. I was supposed to be on season 8 of MasterChef.
So what happened?
So because I was going through the divorce and everything. So here's what happened. Round 3 was, hey, you're going to be on a show. Here's your contract. They actually gave me a contract. They said I had to go to California for 6 months for the taping of the show. I had to give up my cell phone. I had no contact with my family for 6 months. And I would be actually getting paid while I'm there. They would keep me in a hotel the whole time. Just no internet access and no phone access, because they didn't, at that time, MasterChef was a huge thing and they didn't want to let anything leaked out in the internet or anything. And I had this court thing for my kids, and it was like, the time that I had to leave, I had to tell my lawyer, I said, look, listen, is there a way that we could talk to the judge and say, look, I have a huge opportunity right in front of me that I want to take. Can we postpone this whole thing until the show is over? And my lawyer was like, I don't see that there being a problem, And, we brought it in front of the judge. The judge looked at it as a good opportunity as well. But my ex-wife basically shut it down and said, no, if he doesn't show up, he loses his rights to his children. That's it. Done. So I did what was right, and I fought for my children. And I have custody of my children to this day.
Wow. You got a lot of layers there, brother. You got a lot of layers there. That is incredible. Do you think you'll be invited back?
They actually send me emails every so often, like, hey, if you want to try out again, here's a tryout date and stuff. I don't think I want to do it, because to me it was like, it brings me back to a time that, I could have, would have, should have, but I didn't. And then ironically, the person that I've wanted to meet the most, believe it or not, it wasn't Chef Gordon Ramsay. Season 8 was the first time that they announced, and he was on this show, Aaron Sanchez. I look up to Aaron Sanchez. And when I found out season 8, he was going to be one of the chefs, my heart broke. And I said, I am never doing this shit again. Nope. But a couple of years go by, and Ashley is now trying to convince me to do Chopped. She wants me to do Beat Bobby Flay. And she's like, and if your Kayfabe Kitchen thing goes off really good, I'm going to put you on the Guy Fieri show.
Well, it sounds like you got a lot on your plate, brother. I mean, and I second that emotion there by your wife there, Miss Ashley Mayberry. We want to see you on all the TV shows. We want to see you at all the places there. And in fact, my good friend, Chef Tiffany Faison, I know she listens to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast. I would love to see Chef Manny Fresh do something with you, Tiffany. So, if you're listening, let's touch base and see if we can find a way to work something out there. So.
I'm open. I'm open for anything. Anybody that ever wants to do anything, I'm open for it. I'm open to interview anybody. And when I say interview anybody, I'm talking about I will go to your house, I'll set up everything, and you're going to get a free meal out of me when I interview you. because that's what it's about. That's the whole thing about Kayfabe Kitchen. That's what it geared towards. Is I want to know about you and your food.
Chef Manny Fresh, once again, you are an inspiration. It's funny that here you are on a wrestling podcast, and we spent far more time talking about life and the joy of cooking and, everything but pro wrestling. And I think that's what made this special. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Rasslin.